Hey guys, Jeff Hopek here. Welcome back to another episode of Interesting Humans podcast. There's a moment in life when everything splits into before and after. And for Patrick Knelly, our guest today, that moment came with a diagnosis that he never, ever saw coming: esophageal cancer. In this episode today, we don't just talk about survival. We're going to talk about going deep inside the fear, the fight, the moments where nothing is guaranteed, because sometimes the stories that matter most are the ones that almost never got told. So today's episode, there's going to be 7 main themes. And the first is going to be, we're going to talk about Patrick's life before. So what did it look like? What was happening in his life? 2 is the moment, the diagnosis. And for cancer patients, I hear them explain the second. They remember the second vividly. So we'll talk about that. 3 is the low, the fear. We're going to talk about when it was worse for Patrick, the fear, the uncertainty. 4 is the fight. What did the treatment look like? How did it build and shape resilience? 5 is the shift. For some, there was one major perspective shift. For others, there were multiple shifts that occurred throughout. Next is going to be 6 will be the after. So the life now, what does it look like? What's different in life? 7 is the message, the encouragement, the strength, the hope and healing message that Patrick wants to send out to everybody. So let's dive right in, Patrick. First, I want to say thanks for being on here. This is going to be an incredible episode. You reached out to me. I'm so glad that you did, because it's been a major theme throughout my episodes, and I probably have at least 6 to 8 great cancer stories, and I know yours is going to be one of them here today. So let's dive right in. Talk to me about what life looked like before the big diagnosis.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, it feels like 30 years ago, even though it was 6, but pretty standard, working class, just get it done kind of life. I had my wife and I had 2 kids. My daughter was, I think, 5 or 6, and my son was like 9 when I was diagnosed, and we were basically just running with them every day. My mom she had a comment, she called it turbo life. You're like, the whole family's pitching in to just get it done. We were running a small family business, and my wife had a job, and get up early, get to work, get the kids to school, run like crazy, go to after school activities, and crash into bed and just do it all again the next day. It was about I look back at it and it seems a lot different because my mind works different now, which is obviously something I think we'll probably get into a little more down the road. But
Yeah.
I feel like we were just going so fast and doing the things we needed to do on the day to day. But yeah, life was good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was very blessed, and that my family was, happy, and everything was going well. And I feel like
Yeah.
we were just kind of cruising like,
Yeah.
everyone else. Like the joke about little house in the suburbs and 2.5 kids and a dog, like kind of what
Yeah.
we were doing. I was a hardworking guy and probably spent a little too much time on that. But, I was into my son's activities. He was a baseball player, and, coaching him and running with my daughter, and she was a dance and all that. So,
Yeah.
pretty standard, but
Yeah.
that was it.
Healthy. I mean, healthy for the most part.
For the
Nothing.
most part, yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter
Yeah.
had some little stuff when she was a baby, but it was all, relatively quickly, remedied. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, everything was cruising, going along good.
Yeah.
We'd had some stuff. Everyone does. My wife's mom passed away young, which was difficult for us. But she had, when by the time everything went off the rails for us, she had healed from that and was doing really well. And yeah, I mean, my parents were both alive and close and helping, and her dad was doing well, so things
Yeah.
were good. Things were very good.
So,
So,
yeah, no, that's awesome. It's a great baseline. Helps us understand that there wasn't there wasn't something going on your whole life or for an extended period of time.
Mm-mm.
I just interviewed an F-15 pilot who was in the most unbelievable shape of his life training for the Thunderbirds, and he had a stomach pain, but he would call it a 2 out of 10. It wouldn't go away, but he had it for a long, long time. And finally, they said, we need to get an approval to do an MRI. They did it. It was one of the most rare, one of the rarest forms of cancer. It ended up being stage 4. They come back in the room and go, you have 18 months to live. So, and my point in saying that is
Yeah.
you didn't have that. So life's good. You're
It
cruising.
was. Yeah, I had some
What's the,
symptoms. I mean, it was a little shorter than 18 months, but or, I probably had about 6 months of symptoms. We knew something wasn't quite right, but I mean,
yeah,
I lived a relatively healthy lifestyle, a good diet, not a smoker, not a heavy drinker, just, pretty much surrounded by people in the medical community too, which will
yeah.
you'll understand like as we progress here that was a theme in my entire journey. I had some incredible care, which was pretty awesome, but um we kind of all dismissed it because it just seemed like there's no possible way it could be something serious, take a little
What was it?
Pepsi.
Like, what was happening? What did I want to get into that
Yeah.
sort of the next phase now is
Yeah, if you're
what did
ready
you
now,
start
that's fine.
feeling? How? Yeah, yeah.
So
So
I
walk me through.
so the summer prior, like the spring prior to my diagnosis, I was already starting to have some symptoms, but the previous fall, I started to have a little bit of trouble swallowing some foods. It would kind of just get stuck, drink a little water and send it down, and it was like a weird sensation that I wasn't even exactly sure what it was at the time. But I would put that probably the 6 to 8 month prior range. And, a lot of time with men in their 40s with high stress jobs, you get some like acid reflux issues, talking
Yeah,
about swallowing issues. It's really not that uncommon. Especially for me without a lot of risk factors. Nobody really pointed to this as something that was, in on the horizon or should even be on our radar. I had a swallow study done the winter previous to see what was going on, and it looked pretty good. Now, in hindsight, we may have seen something there, but it wasn't anything obvious, and that was fine. But it just continued to progress to the point where I was losing some weight. I was drinking a little bit more of my food, which is something that a middle aged guy really shouldn't be doing. But I didn't put it off for a long. My wife's gonna laugh. She gives me a hard time about ignoring doctors, but I really don't. Like, if something's wrong, I kind of know. Like, and I was not complacent, which is probably what helped, give me a good
yeah,
result. But
yeah.
we got to a point where I was definitely stressed. I mean, at the time, I was doing a whole bunch for my son's little league as a volunteer, and our business was growing, and I had a huge chunk of it, high hours, a lot of stress. So we thought it was just stress related. Got on some Pepsid antacid type stuff, and I thought I saw a little improvement. Maybe that was the placebo effect, but over the next 6 8 weeks, kind of saw that it might even be getting worse with the prescription, and then we kind of hopped into action. Got scheduled for an endoscopy, which is where, excuse me, but shit hit the fan. So
Wow. What age
I
were you at
was
the time when
39.
symptoms?
Yeah, I was actually
Okay.
diagnosed like 13 days before my 40th birthday, so that sucked. But yeah.
Shoo. Okay, so
Mm.
39, but other than a couple things you mentioned, no other major symptoms. So you didn't have,
This is something I marvel at. I felt great. It's funny. I lost a few pounds, and some of it was on purpose. But my energy level was good. I was strong. I was healthy, and honestly, on the day to day, I felt fantastic and no pain. Nothing. Just a little bit of trouble
mm,
getting some food down. And it was like those drier, heavier foods, like a chicken breast or something would get sort of
yeah,
stuck. And eventually worked it out, but it did get worse. I look back now, and at the time I was probably just trying to make it happen. But I would get a milkshake twice a day instead of having lunch or something. Like things that I knew I could get in there. But I had lost about 15 or 20 pounds, and I was watching what I ate, and I was exercising more. So the weight loss kind of almost felt like an accomplishment, but I think it was
yeah.
helped along by the symptoms. So, that was like I don't know. I was sort of feeling good about myself having a few pounds off, and
Yeah,
then it progressed to the point where it was kind of undeniable that something wasn't quite right. I mean, again, we didn't go into the endoscope expecting the catastrophic results we got, but
right. Wow. Okay.
mm,
So you schedule the endoscopy. But you still don't have even an inkling that it's cancer. You didn't like Google stuff and they're like, "Oh,
no,
you're probably
no.
going to have cancer." No.
No,
So
I'm
you're
not a
just
big
thinking,
WebMD. Like, I feel like
yeah.
every time you Google a symptom, and this goes for even when you know what you have, the worst case scenario is the first thing that comes up on the search. And I think a lot of people maybe don't understand that. And that's, I think, why I was lucky, to keep my headspace clear. A lot of the medical people in my life were good about that. I remember a discussion with my best friend. He's a doctor in the Navy, and we were talking about how bad this could be. And he was obviously trying to do what he could to help me, but he's like, listen, he's like, those statistics are the the entirety of diagnostics. So, a guy who's 75 and is diagnosed with what you have and has a lifetime of alcoholism and smoking and is weak has
Yeah.
X survival rate, and you're 39 and healthy, and you're not the same. So you see these statistics and you see these things on Google or WebMD when you find out something bad, and it can be jarring. These percentages are extremely hard to process in your head. But
Yep.
I was very lucky in the sense that I had pragmatic medical people in my life that basically said, that's not you, even though that's what it says. And
Yeah.
as a general baseline, I never put a ton of stock into that kind of stuff. So,
Good.
but yeah, I mean, before the test, no, Jeff, I was not thinking we were walking out of there,
Yeah.
with the diagnosis that would change everything. So
So you go in for the endoscopy. Um, do you get an answer the same day?
same
How does
day,
that
yep.
work? Okay, what happens?
Uh,
So,
yeah, I'll never forget it. I mean, I knew I didn't have to talk to the doctor. Was in the recovery room. They twilight you for an endoscopy. It's not a big deal. You're out for half an hour, but
yeah.
they kind of put you in a solo room with a tech for a few minutes for evaluation. I still remember the guy. I wish I knew his name. He's local. I'm sure I'd know him some way.
Yeah.
So nice. I guarantee he knew, though. I guarantee he knew, because he was a great guy. And then, 10 minutes, they knew I was okay. Wheeled me out to my wife. We sat there for a few minutes, and directly out the side of the, waiting room I was in was a set of double swinging doors. And the doctor that performed the endoscopy walked in. And just by dumb luck, as he cleared through the doors, we made eye contact and immediately knew. I knew. He didn't have to say a word. He kind of made a beeline right, and I knew what was going on because you could read it on his face from 20 feet away. So, yeah, it
Whoa. I
was
just got chills. Whew.
that was tough. I mean, I think my wife kind of had her back to him, but I saw him, and from that moment forward, I knew I was in for it, because
W-
you could see, I could tell, I mean, and I'm sure for a doctor, I mean, I'm a young guy. He knew my situation, knew I had a couple kids, and I guarantee he's a
Yeah.
smart enough man to know that I was in for it. It's not a good diagnosis, and I think I saw that in his just one facial expression gave me as much information as the 20-minute discussion we had afterwards. So,
So
yeah.
the moment, and you did a great job framing that moment. In that moment, was the exact thing in your brain, stage 4 cancer, I'm dead soon? Or what was the severity of
No,
it?
no, no, but that's kind of where it got. No, my initial read was, um,
It's bad.
excuse me, oh shit, yeah. I could just see
Yeah.
it. Obviously, I'm not a medical person. I didn't know what that meant, but I could tell you I knew it was bad. And then he came in
Yeah.
a couple minutes later. He didn't leave us long.
Right.
Basically, he was good. A lot of respect for that man. He was good to me, but he kind of gave us a slightly watered down version of what he thought was going on. Described it as a stricture, which you know I think I pressed him at the time. I was like, what
A
do you
what?
think? And
What did he
he
call it?
he called it a stricture, which is like a narrowing of a tube, basically. Um,
Hmm.
like I said, I knew, and I kind of just sort of asked him, and I think, at that time he told us he thought it was very likely esophageal cancer, which you just asked me about, like, checking symptoms and stuff. So what's the first thing that happens? He walks out, phone comes open, boom, what's this? First thing you search is, esophageal cancer survival rates, and it's low. It's low. I mean, it's
Oh,
you don't have to dig around long to see that it's probably less than 20% on a 5-year time horizon for most people that are diagnosed, which, I'm
wow.
sitting there in a robe trying to recover from an endoscope and process this, and it didn't hit me until much later that those numbers, like my friend in the Navy said, didn't actually apply. I mean, I think I did have a better chance there. There were some factors that contributed to better outcomes for me, but like that's the first thing you do. And I guarantee everyone that hears bad news does it. I mean, we have these little boxes in our pocket that have all the information ever learned, and
Yeah.
the first thing you want to do is know what your chances are.
Right.
So that was really hard. And my wife was right there with me, and I think she knew too. But
Yeah.
we stayed in the hospital and went upstairs, and then so my best, like, our family, is one of our closest friends is a medical doctor who's, she's been in the Lehigh Valley system, which is now Jefferson. She's been in it for years, and she kind of like buzzed right over, and then got us hooked up with a local oncologist, hematologist, like that night for a little consult, which was pretty crazy. I think I got a CT that evening too, but honestly, Jeff, it all runs together.
Yeah.
It was kind of crazy, but we were juggling everything. You're trying to figure out what to do. The kids were with I think they might have been at school, so my parents had to get them. And then we wanted to see my parents, and I didn't want the kids there yet. And it was just, I don't even remember it all. It was,
Yeah. Mm.
you're spinning. That's really the
Yeah.
best description.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to stay right in this moment now. When did they say stage 4? Or
So, no, I don't
how
think
did
that
it
was the
work?
case. Yeah, no.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll give you the whole rundown. So
Yeah.
that evening, I met with Dr. Mike Evans. He ended up being my oncologist, which at the time we weren't
Okay.
sure of. He was just who was on staff, and um, you know, he was probably the most like calming and centering person through my entire journey. And at the time, I didn't know it. But my mom and dad had got there at that point. He came up and talked to me for a little while, and at that point they had kind of settled in that it was definitely esophageal cancer. They had no idea if there was any type of distal spread. So your basics are, stage 1, and then 2, 3 are, from what I gathered through the journey, were pretty similar. It's mostly the size of the tumor, and then your transition to stage 4 would be if you have distal spread to either lymph nodes or other organs, which at the
Okay.
time he didn't have. Yeah, so at the time they just had a picture of the inside of my esophagus. And I think they knew there was a tumor that had substantial size to it. So the assumption was that I was past the stage 1, which is where you might be able to treat without doing the whole gamut. Most esophageal cancers, really bad because the symptoms aren't noticed until it's been there for years and it's all over the place. And at the
Mm.
time, I don't think Mike knew that I had decent chance. But I kicked my family out, and I just looked him in the eyes. I'm like, "What is this? Is this the end? Is this whatever?" And he looked me square in the eyes, and he's like, "No." He's like, "This is a speed bump." He's like, "You can do this." He's like, "It's gonna be hard." He's like, "This is gonna be a long, long process." He's like, "You're probably looking at, months of chemo and radiation, and then a really big surgery at the end." And he's like, "It's not avoidable." He's like, "It's not the kind of thing where, whatever." But um
Wow.
he gave me hope like almost immediately. And I'm, like I said, looking back on it, I don't know if he had enough information to give me that hope, but I liked the attitude.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a lot. So we progressed from there to a PET scan, which you'll notice a common theme. Like I said, I have very, very lucky to have really good people in my corner at that time. We went over the next 8 days. So I can't honestly recall the exact process, but we got a PET scan sometime within 48 hours of that, which is like unheard of. It's usually weeks, months. But I will tell you, Jeff, had I had to wait weeks with something growing inside of me, I might have got a knife and cut it out myself, because I just
Yeah.
couldn't. Like, I'm a fixer by nature, as the kind of person, the kind of job I did my whole life. It's like, there's no way I could have handled that. So we got a PET scan right afterwards. I got a Metaport installed with the anticipation of needing chemo. Within 3 to 4 days, we had, I think, at least one CT. And at that point, they were as confident as they could be that I had not had metastatic spread, which is excellent news. The way it was described to me is you have like multiple lymph nodes that kind of run up the side of your esophagus, and they tie into the rest of your body for drainage. They're almost like Christmas lights sort of hanging up the esophagus. And there were one or two down near where my tumor was. And, at no point did anyone say to me, you don't have cancer in those lymph nodes, or you do, because the tumor was in a position that was kind of sort of just the whole area. But they did know relatively soon that it wasn't in my liver, it wasn't elsewhere. So, that was like the first little sliver of good news. You know, and then from that point, we consulted with a surgeon in Lehigh who basically said, I don't care what stage you are. He's like, if you're past like the absolute infant stages, like something that would have been caught by a diagnostic for no reason with no symptoms, once you're
Yeah.
past that, it doesn't matter if you're 2, 3, or 4. He's like, we're going to hit it with the same hammer. So why would we wait 6 weeks to schedule you for a diagnostic endoscopy, which is a thing where they go in same way, except they don't go with a camera. It's like an imaging system. He's like, why would we schedule you, wait 6 weeks for a diagnostic endoscopy if we're going to treat it the same way? And I was like, okay, that sounds good. Let's
Wow.
go. So I already had the
Wow.
port
Yeah.
in. And
Hmm.
so we did a consult with him, and he was cocky and arrogant, and I loved it because he wasn't a jerk, but
Yeah.
he was very, very confident, and he was very real. And I like cars, and I'm a mechanical guy, and he basically described with his hands how he's going to do it. And he said, like little stuff that just appealed to me. He had done some robotic assisted surgeries, and he didn't like the results. Which is very unusual in this day and age, because everyone seems to want to go robotic, and technologies like, so advanced in the medical field, they all want to use it. And he's like, I was closing up patients that I had never put my hands on their tissue, and I'd never actually dissected their tumor, and I just didn't feel comfortable with the concept of, did I get it all if I couldn't actually see it? And it was kind of a little bit of an old school approach. I mean, there's a lot of surgeons doing the surgery I had one way, the other way, nobody knows, blah blah blah. But I liked his kind of rationale.
Yeah.
But we left there, and we did get a consult with Penn, and that was a nightmare. They were nowhere near as positive, and they were nowhere near as personal. So my wife and I also almost got in like 3 car accidents on the way to Philly.
Oh
It was like a
gosh.
sign, and I'm not a sign like superstitious
Ye-
person. But
Yeah.
the thought on the way home, like, I mean, Penn Medical's amazing. Obviously, it's a incredible
Yeah.
institution. But you
Sure.
know, we kind of did like the consult with a chemoradiologist, consult with a surgeon, consult with another surgeon, and then out the door. And it's like, well, here you go. And I liked all the people, but the thought of being in Philadelphia for days on end, 2.5 hours from my house, that drive up the Pennsylvania Turnpike, I just, it was a monster struggle for me mentally. And on the ride home, I was texting a little bit with my primary care physician, and she kind of got me on the horn with the oncologist that I met the first day. And at the time, they were obviously sort of learning themselves, like where we were, like what we were looking at. But we had the PET scan results, and they kind of decided at that point. In fact, I think we were almost halfway home. You go through the Lehigh Tunnel there on the Turnpike.
Oh, yeah.
So we lose cell phone reception. I think my wife and I pulled over, and I had a cell phone call with the oncologist, and he's like, they do a like a cooperative with Sloan Kettering, and there was a physician at Sloan Kettering, Dr. Koo, I think his name was, who was a kind of on the cutting edge of this stuff. And he's like, I'm hearing that there's like a different way. And he's like, we've done it a few times in Allentown. He's like, I think you're a great candidate, blah, blah, blah. He's like, give me a day or two. So they got an email chain going, I guess, and figured it out. So we chose to stay with Lehigh Valley, and I treated like 4 miles from my house, which was pretty awesome.
Wow.
Because the medicine that goes in is the medicine. Where you get it, you don't have to go to a real highly technical place. But the big thing was, they decided to go with a type of treatment that was a little bit out of the box. The way it was described to me is there's their standard of care, and it's kind of like a flow chart. But there are times where there's something new, and it takes time for people to realize that the something new is better. So it wasn't on the standard of care, which as a 39-year-old guy, like, going out of the box here, like part of me was like, what am I doing? Like, why would I not do what is proven? But when the results of what's proven are like 40 to 50% survival rate at 5 years, I was like maybe there's better. So
Yeah.
probably one of the most, difficult decisions of my life. And I had to make it in like, 12 hours because whatever. So, get on the phone with everyone I possibly know in the medical field and ask them if they've heard of this and if it makes sense, and got some reassurance from some really smart people that I trusted, and decided to go with this kind of experimental way of doing things, which was a eight treatments of like a very serious chemo ahead of the surgery, and no radiation at all, which most people that have a tumor in their esophagus, they irradiate the crap out of it and then give you chemo to kill anything around it, and then they cut the whole thing out. Radiation can be pretty rough. Radiation is also one of those things you can only do to your chest cavity once. So the thinking there is, if you go chemo first and you hit it with the best you can, and by chance you have some type of recurrence, maybe you can radiate the second time then for a better chance. So it just kind of made some sense to me. So that entire process, that last 10 minutes of rambling, was like 7 days worth of stuff going on, all those tests.
Wow.
But I went from diagnosis to my first chemo treatment after making that call to go with the Sloan Kettering program. It was a kind of an experimental
Yeah.
deal. And I got the first needle in my shoulder for the Metaport 8 days later, which is absolutely insane. But honestly,
Wow.
thank God for that, because the way my head goes, like you said in the intro about like the lows, like that period, like trying to figure that out. I mean, that's it. Like,
Yeah. That's
brutal.
it.
And
Oh my.
all that information, right? That all comes in an 8-day period. It seems like a lot, but in that 8 days, man, you get a lot of downtime where you can't do anything. And like, I don't know, I think my wife and I just pretty much laid on the couch in like complete and total dark, like what is happening? Like, I can't even describe it. Like, you're not
Because
tired, but
you still felt good,
it
right?
felt
I mean,
fine. I did,
you
yeah.
felt
I mean,
fine.
the swallowing it was obviously worse. I was having a hard time eating. And they kind of put me on a
Yeah.
liquid diet right out of the gate, which
Yeah.
wasn't a big deal. I'm stubborn. I mean, if I got to drink 7 Ensures a day, whatever. But
Sure.
they, yeah, and that was another thing, the diet part of it. Like, they told me, you're going to lose a ton of weight through this because the surgery is massive. And it was. I think I underestimated the surgery. It seemed down the road, and I was kind of like, oh, that's the last step. Okay, whatever. Well, that was
Yeah.
tough.
That
But
was a lot.
it
Yeah.
was a lot. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was, you're gonna lose a bunch of weight, so try to keep your weight up as much as possible. I ended up gaining weight through chemo and like liquid diet, all that, because I'm just wasn't gonna take any other answer. But that was
Yeah.
kind of like the diagnosis. That was kind of how it all unfolded. So
So
that
let's
progressed
move in
to,
now.
yeah.
That's I mean, you framed it up perfectly. Let's move into the lowest part, the valley. Was there one? the absolute lowest part of this whole thing?
I don't know. It's funny. I'm learning this about myself at 46 years old. I am like so stubbornly optimistic. It's kind of like ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie. Like there was not a like I was not happy about this, but I transitioned from like, oh my God, I'm gonna die to fight like hell real quick. Like I kind of talked to you about, how the stuff you're doing with your kids and the hey dad stuff. Like I was not ready to leave my kids, obviously. No one would be, but
Right.
the only answer to that is fight like hell. And the fact that that went quick was really great for my mental state because I think the worst was the 7 or 8 days between being diagnosed and doing the tests and getting all the medical procedures done to prepare me for the chemo. It was the downtime during that window that was so hard because you've and I guarantee anyone that's ever been diagnosed understands this. You have something growing inside of your body that is trying to kill you and you can't do anything about it. And
Mm.
I was just overcome with this, like, it's fear. I mean, it is. It's fear, like it's not fear like a scary movie or haunted house. I mean, it's fear that
Yeah.
is just deep in your entire body and soul. Like there is no comparing it. You can't, wouldn't ever want to, but you can't put someone in that mind frame. I mean, the fear of losing my own life was not really on my mind. It was the fear of like leaving my kids behind. I mean, they weren't ready. They weren't old enough. And how does that change their life? And I know I didn't ask for it, but like
Yeah.
what's happening to me is going to change everything for them. No kid loses a parent at 9 and isn't
Mm.
different. And that
Right.
was like super, super hard to get my head around. And obviously, like wasn't looking to die or have cancer, but like it did change everything for them. But like I sit here as a great result. And I mean, my doctor was right. Like it was a speed bump as it was a
Sure.
big one, but like at that time, I mean, your gut is saying, I want to believe him, but your head is saying, this guy is probably just placating me because he knows what I'm in for. And, I'm a
Yeah.
smart enough person to be pragmatic in bad situations. And I, unfortunately was pragmatic enough to know that there was a pretty good chance that he was bullshitting me or at least just trying to make it easier. And
Yeah.
that's hard. But, you know, I spent those 6 or 7, 8 days. We made a lot of decisions and we did a lot of research. I did a ton of reading.
Hmm.
My nature is to fix. I figured the only thing I could do is educate myself and somehow maybe find something different or better or that'll give me an edge. And, I guess that's kind of the way I'm wired, which is fine. It was probably helpful. But those days did not get 100% taken up with that process. So the darkest times were just waiting to get after it. But once the fight started, I mean, I think I kind of, in a weird way, thrived in that environment because I kind of got a kick out of the fact that like, so they put me on this chemo that was like 4 drugs, and I mean, they said they're basically just gonna hit me with a sledgehammer. And I actually kind of tolerated it all right. Like it was very, very, very awful.
Yeah.
But like I got through it. I did the entire 8 treatments, which was a big indicator of success. And we had a couple of scans during the process. One at like, I think it was after 4 treatments that showed like significant improvement. I also started to be able to eat a little bit again. So like you've never like if you've never had chemotherapy in your body, like it's really hard to describe. Like I had a couple of people that were like had been through it that I spoke to. It really helped me, but like it is really changes everything inside of you. Like you're basically killing yourself to try to then kill the cancer in the process and then recover. And I mean,
Mm.
it kills every lining, every membrane, every fast growing cell in your body dies. So, it was tough, but
Jeez.
I kind of like, I expected the chemo to actually be a little worse. I mean, it hangs on you by the end. I mean, treatment 1 and 2 were very difficult because there were a lot of things going on, losing your hair, like I couldn't, it was a platinum based chemo, so I couldn't drink anything cold or it would send like shockwaves down my spine. My
Wow.
obviously, my whole body felt weird, but like I did have like a very like low grade like sort of aching in the area of like where the tumor would have been, and I don't know, somehow I took that as like, oh, that shit's dying. I think that like helped.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, all right, I'm winning, and I don't know, that process somehow agreed with my crazy mindset, but
Right.
yeah, the
I
the
could
the
see
week
that.
leading up to the treatment starting was tough because it just felt like I'm waiting, and it was only 8 days, like, but
Mm.
that's how it felt. It just felt like,
Yeah.
I gotta do something. Like, what do I do?
Right. Right.
I mean,
Was there any time, do you remember ever going, like saying to yourself, I'm not going to keep doing this?
no, that wasn't an option for me. I'll be honest,
Never.
um, I no, that never crossed my mind.
Yeah. Great.
I think, I did a lot of reading and learning about how outcomes can be improved through mindset. And I'm not like a real earthy, crunchy person. Like, I believe in medicine and my doctors, and, think the holistic side of healing is real, but I wouldn't put my life on it. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
I think there's a component
Hmm.
to healing that is 100% in your attitude. I think there's a component to healing that has to do a lot with what we put in our bodies and how we feed ourselves and what we don't put in our bodies. But once
Hmm.
there's a tumor growing in your esophagus that is absolutely trying to kill you if you leave it go, like, there's no other option, in my opinion, than just letting the doctors do their thing with medicine. So, I try to
Sure.
take a full around like approach to it. And I mean, I did do some like kooky stuff like in my head. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I woke up every morning after got to the bathroom and looked myself straight in the eyes in the mirror and said, "Not today." Like, it's not. Excuse me, but I'm not fucking dying. And
Yeah.
that was literally every single day. And I
That's
didn't stop
awesome.
doing that until like 2 years out because it just wasn't an option. And I don't think that's why I was good outcome, but I don't think it hurt.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
I'm not a real religious guy. There's a lot of people in my life that believe in God and have faith, and I just was never blessed with faith, so I didn't have that to lean on. I couldn't just say, God's got me and I'll be all right. But
yeah.
I as no matter how comforting and easy that would make a journey like having cancer, and reassuring to think that there's some higher power to have you, I just don't have that in me. And I, sometimes I wish I did because it's harder because I'm on my own in my mind. And you know, I don't know. My wife's a very religious person. Her family's very religious. I know they prayed for me. Hundreds of people prayed for me, and I took it. I took it all, and I thanked them all for it. It was incredible. But
Yeah.
I just am not wired to have that. And, I did some reading that said, religious people have better outcomes because their stress level is lower. They trust a higher power to take care of them. So
Hmm.
I just kind of said, I'm gonna take care of myself, and I don't have another option. But I mean that, I think the mindset helped. I mean, I did some like healing therapy in my head, just like little stuff. I mean, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of all that, but I don't know. I mean, it helped, but no, I never thought I can't do this. I mean,
Yeah.
there were some times after the surgery that were way more difficult than I anticipated, Jeff, but I never to like, once it's done, the only thing after you get a surgery like that is to heal. You can't go back on it. So there
Right.
was no
Right.
quitting once they cut me.
Yeah. So staying in the fight and the struggle. So you have the chemo, you have the 8 sessions.
Mhm.
When when did it become reality what the surgery is going to be? Did you block, like, I could see me blocking that out of my mind, not wanting to know, but then wanting to know and having this like back and forth. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it there with the blocking it out.
Yeah.
I coped with the diagnosis by learning. I read everything I could read from survivors, people that had been through the surgery, and I was trying to figure out what my life was going to look like afterwards. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, in hindsight now, here I sit almost coming up on 7 years. I was mostly wrong. So all you read on the internet is people that have had frustrating or difficult long-term outcomes from the surgery. The surgery is called an esophagectomy. I don't know. It was described to me as like one of the top three most complicated thoracic surgeries. Obviously the Whipple for pancreatic cancer is a whole nother animal, but they
Yeah.
basically mine was done the traditional way. So they split me basically from my pelvis to the breastbone, um, and then remove from the top of the stomach. They take the cut on the esophagus, and then they turn the stomach into like a long tube, right? Which it's not supposed to be. Then they cut you from, so like my neck all the way around my shoulder blade to under my arm, jack up your shoulder blade, go in there, remove the esophagus. They pull the stomach up in between your lungs and reattach it. So like your stomach is now here, and I mean it's kind of crazy, but
Gosh.
I read so many people that were long term like unable to eat, unable to hold weight. But it's kind of like people on the internet that complain about your business. Like you see the negative reviews, but the people who had a good time just go about their life. And I
Right.
think that's what like maybe my process was maybe more difficult on myself because I read these people in forums and on Reddit and in different, survivor groups that had like really life-changing results from the surgery. And like I am different. Like it's harder and I hide it. I mean, I'm a fake it till you make it guy. Like whatever. Nobody wants to hear my sob story, but
Yeah.
um I didn't like for the first 2 years I had a lot of those issues, but I've healed well. Like and I think there are a lot of people out there that have healed well, you just don't hear from them. And I think that was my mistake is listening to all the woe is me people, which tend to be what you hear when you're looking for information on a surgery. Because the people that healed well don't complain, they don't talk about it. So, but I mean,
Wow.
I denied it and then, had the surgery and woke up afterwards and oh man, that was a 6 months. So, I mean, it's a big one. I think I was not quite prepared for the pain, the initial healing, the difficulty. I mean, it was a doozy. I got some stories around that surgery, man.
Yeah. We're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna get into them. I
Mm.
I, I want to say this again, just in case anybody missed it. You made such an incredible point right there. When I dine out at a restaurant, if I had an unbelievable review, I leave it. If I had an absolutely terrible review, I leave it. But the 99% aren't leaving the reviews, or the
Oh, sure.
89, whatever the number is. What you just said, man, makes so much sense that it's just sort of the naysayers putting putting negative
Yep.
mojo out across the internet. Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Let's go back into the right where you're at. So the surgery. Yeah. Tell me
Mhm.
some stories. Tell me, start off when your eyes opened.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
get me right
Oh,
there.
oh God, you got you. You're in for one here.
Let's
So
go. Let's
I'm a
go.
big guy. By the time I had surgery, I was like 240 pounds because they asked me to put some weight on. I wasn't able to eat by mouth for almost a month. So they like
What?
at the end of my, I mean a little bit, but it was like Jello and like little stuff. But
Yeah.
so towards the end of chemo, I was able to swallow again, and I had a month break. It ended up being like only about 3 weeks because I had done pretty well. So like I actually started to get a little hair back, and like for 3 weeks, like not having had any chemo, man, by the end of that, I was feeling good. Like I was hoping that maybe they'd call me someday and be like, "Oh, you don't need the surgery. You're fine." That never came, but um I felt good,
Wow.
and, I was positive, and, it was like fall, it was like middle of October, we finally got in for the surgery, but, yeah, part of the surgery was having like an epidural, which is basically a nerve block. Put it in beforehand, knocked me out. I don't remember anything after that. I guess surgery was 7 or 8 hours. My wife has some funny stories. I guess the doctor came out all sweaty, said I was a lot of work, but, um, it, it, but I actually, so they
Oh,
dislodged my epidural during the procedure, and I woke up in a pain, like, in a physical pain, and I'm like, I'm just a normal person, but I am pretty tolerant to pain. I'm not really a complainer. I woke up in a pain that, you got the frowny face chart in the doctor's office. Like, I was 5 or 6 faces to the right of that last guy who's red. Like,
oh,
I'm telling you, I would have rather died at that point. And after everything I've said, I think most people can gather that that was not something I was looking for. So it was awful. But it took them about 20 minutes to figure that out, which was obviously just, an unfortunate mistake. But I remember at one point they put me back out because I was in so much pain, and they woke me up, and the anesthesiologist comes in, and he's like, "What's going on?" He's talking to me, and I'm like, "Look, I don't think it's supposed to feel like this." I'm like, "I feel like there's a elephant on my chest, and he's sitting on a bunch of knives." And the guy's like, "Okay." And he took an ice
oh
cube,
my gosh.
and he drew a number 3 on the inner side of my left thigh, and I said, "Oh, that's a 3." And he went white because I shouldn't have felt anything below the middle of my chest. So
Oh
they put
my
me back
gosh.
out and then redid the epidural, and everything was fine after that. But yeah, that was a mess, but it was short-lived. I mean, it didn't have any impact on my healing. And
Gosh.
then, so yeah, you wake up from there and you go to ICU for like 2 days. And I mean, I was just like getting hit by a truck. Like, I had no concept of how I was gonna feel. I mean, I don't think anyone does until, someone goes inside and replumbs you, and it doesn't happen to a lot of people, thankfully, but it was rough. I ended up in the hospital for 9 days, I believe. I think we were gonna go for 10, but on the ninth day, I was able to get up and walk around and eat a little bit of Jello. But, I mean, I could go through the whole process, but honestly, Jeff, it's a lot of tubes, it's a lot of drainage, it's a lot of pain, and it's just a lot of waiting for your body to just kind of figure it out. They fill you up with air so that your esophagus can heal and they don't get any like leaks because there's stitching there. And if your food starts to leak into your body, you can obviously get septic. So, they fed me through like, I had a feeding tube for about a month and a half, which thank God I didn't use after the hospital. I kind of just chose to lose more weight and eat the little bit I could, because the feeding tube process was really, I struggled with that. It was not something we
Oh,
wanted to do. So, yeah, but I mean, I got home on day 10, and I was basically chairbound for maybe 2 months, but part of the procedure was collapsing your lung. And like I was in pretty good shape beforehand, and I mean, I couldn't walk up the steps afterwards. It was a long
oh,
process. It took probably, I would say, a year for me to get like lung capacity back. And I think the biggest thing is like your eating, like everything about my nourishing myself changed. So for the first 6 months, I mean, I couldn't eat anything but like vegetables and like a little bit of like chicken thigh, and like I could eat maybe 150 to 200 calories at a time before I would just get bloated. And there's a thing called dumping. Not to get into it, but your stomach basically says, "Oh, I don't want that," and shoots it straight in your intestines. Your intestines go, "We don't want food that's not been in the stomach." So like, and then you basically go into this like, it's kind of like a sugar shock where everything starts cramping, and it's a mess. I mean, I still get it to some extent. I probably will forever,
wow.
but it's minor. I mean, I'm able to manage it. I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do, and I feel like when you're opened up. I think you're like, you want to call it like your gut biome dies, and I think it
Yeah.
establishing that again just takes a very long time. So that was like part of the deal. But yeah, like the post-surgical recovery was not, I did not have myself prepared for it.
Mm.
I was more prepared for like the long-term challenges of eating. Like I knew what I was in for there. But
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of pain, a lot of holes, a lot of tubes, long time before I could walk and get going again. But
Still the mindset through the difficulty. There wasn't a day of giving up or
no, no, I
yeah.
again,
Okay.
I had so I left some stuff out. The surgical biopsy results were excellent. I got what they call complete clinical remission from the chemo alone, which it's funny. I talked a little bit previously about that meeting with my oncologist at the hospital the first day.
Yeah.
Um, he mentioned that at the time. He's like, this is what we want. We want complete clinical remission. It's basically the tumor at the time of the surgery is dead. There are no live cancer cells. That is a very, very big forecaster of quality results outside of the 5-year window. So
Okay.
at that point, I think the difficulty of the surgery was a little bit more just okay, heal, get better, but like we're starting to look good. Like don't get me wrong, I was still fearful for years of recurrence and issues. I still am to some extent, but I
Yeah.
think we had kind of looked at it like, wow, we might have got this. Like there was enough optimism from the medical staff that I was starting to believe that maybe I was going to live. And
Yeah.
like that was good enough to latch on to. So no, I mean, I was never gonna quit. I mean, if it came back, I'd fight it again. I just, you know, it
So
wasn't something I'd sign up for, but had to
yeah.
do it. You got to do it. It's not an option. So
Yeah. There's so much strength in this story. I love it. Let's move in then
it's more stubborn if you
to
ask my
this.
wife.
Good. Well, whatever it took, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so encouraging. And this is going to bring a lot of hope and a lot of a lot of strength to a lot of people for a lot of years to come. So let's move into the now. What does life look like? So we'll call it the after. In the
Mhm.
beginning, I framed it up that we have a before and an after when we have a major episode like this or a
Sure.
major occurrence. So you had your life before.
Mhm.
What's it like now after once healing started, and what are you up to?
Man, I'm a lucky guy. As close as you could get to back on track is kind of where I've gotten. I would say, it took about 3 years for me to kind of get energy and vibrancy back, but I feel good. I do. I mean, I have pain, I have some aches, there's some, the struggles with the eating, but I mean, in general, I mean, I can do everything I want to do. I went back to work way too early, which was an issue, but we talked a little off air about my family business. They needed me. It was my mom and
Yeah.
dad and I ran a relatively big local business, and I was pretty key cog in what we did. And we were never able to fill any of our shoes with employees. It was tough. When you own a
Sure.
business, you put love, sweat, tears into it in a way that you can't replace with X dollar an hour employee. Just can't do it.
Yeah. Can't do
There's
it.
a dedication, and my parents had to dedicate a ton of time to my kids while I was down, and they were amazing, but the business suffered and we were in trouble, and I kind of had to go back and fill my role earlier than needed. But that whole story is another story. But
Hmm.
it progressed to the point where I have returned basically back to full-time work, and I deal with the stresses that anyone else deals with. And it's funny, I used to get so aggravated by that, but now there's times where I'm just like, well, it's certainly better than my alternative timeline. So even though work right now is
Sure.
is kicking me down and everything stinks, and I feel like I'm getting dirt thrown on my head every time I turn around, like, well,
Yeah.
I'm here and
Right.
I'm able to do
Right.
it. So, it's good. And the kids are great. They've done pretty well with it. I mean, it was certainly, jarring experience for my children. I don't know if they're old enough to really unpack like how it was, but the fact that it went so well turned it into more of an experience for them than like a shift point. which,
Yeah.
God, I'm probably more thankful about that than anything. And my wife's been with me the whole time, and she's got a great job, and things are good. I mean, like I said, the small struggles with the health things, I kind of look at them almost like a reminder of the journey more so than a burden.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, God, like if I didn't feel this crappy, pain in my shoulder, I do this all the time. Like, I think people probably think I'm like some kind of weirdo, but I do this all the time. And I can't help it because I have this like horrible scar right under my scapula that just like, I gotta move it.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like, as I'm doing this,
Wow.
like I'm talking to someone, like having a meeting or something, and I'm like, "Ugh." Hey,
Right,
but you know what?
right.
They don't know, and I don't, maybe they think I'm a weirdo, but that's fine. I can live with that. But I
We'll have
like
to
those
get
little
you.
things. I just kind of look at it like, without that, I mean, like, what did I expect? I mean, I got good results, and there's a lot of people that don't make it, and that's to me, it's been 7 years. I don't really talk about this publicly. Like this is, it's not easy for me, Jeff, because like I don't, like I want to celebrate because I've been so very fortunate and I have so much and I've been able to see my kids grow up. I mean, one of my number one goals was to just see my kid play like his last day of Little League. He was 12. He's 16 now and he plays for the high school and he's going to graduate in a year.
Wow.
Like I'm seeing stuff I never even planned for a big portion of my, 40 and 41st year. So like, I
Yeah.
don't like talking about it because, like, I know, like, I've experienced it firsthand. Like, so many people don't live through this, and I've lost friends. I've lost people that I talked to. I've lost people that like mentored me, and it's awful. But you know, here I am, and
Oof.
I still struggle to unpack all that in my own head. It's very
Yeah.
conflicting. You know.
Yeah. Well, you did incredible today. I'm so glad you reached out, number one. Two, wow. So just for the record, this is the first, you see why I wanted to hold off and not hear your story until that. So for everybody
Yeah.
out there, I just want them to know we didn't have a pre-talk about anything other than catching up in life, but we didn't get into any of the cancer, any of the diagnosis, any of the journey, the struggle. I wanted to do it for the first time on this episode. So wow, you did an incredible job. I want to end on the seventh piece now, which is the message. So, if there's somebody out there currently going through it, if there's somebody that listens to this and says, "Oh my goodness, I just got this diagnosis yesterday or last week, or my kids just got it," anything that you want to give for message, for encouragement, strength, hope in the process, faith, whatever it is, share it with us now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it can be done is my best advice. I mean, I'm proof positive that people can heal and recover and get past incredible difficulties and horrible diagnoses. My message would be don't try not to focus on the stories that don't end good because there are stories that end good for every diagnosis. I mean, there are miracle people out there. There's people that survive things that, no one gave them a chance. I mean, I certainly didn't have great, outlook, but it wasn't a zero. I mean, there are people that survive things and medical miracles that happen, and I don't understand it, but I mean, it can happen. And don't give up on yourself, and just fight like hell. Like I said, not today.
Yeah. I love that phrase, man. Not today. I love how you said that too in the mirror.
Yeah,
It's powerful. It's powerful. Yeah, thanks for reaching out. I mean,
yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
what an adventure, what a story. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much strength there. So, what happens going forward now, and then I'll close this out, is you're going to get a lot of people, lots of people sending comments through here. Some
Okay.
people are even going to want to get stuff into your hands and stuff like that. So, I'm literally, they're going to say, "Can you forward this on to Patrick?" So, best point of contact if anybody wants to send you a "Hey, congratulations" type of message. Do you have
Uh,
Instagram?
yeah, I do have an
Do-
Instagram account. I don't really use it for personal use that much, but
Sure. No problem.
Um,
I'll send them along to you. Just send me
yeah,
after the episode.
mhm,
Send me where you want them, because
sure,
you will get them, and they're awesome, and it's great, and
cool,
it's just yeah, it's
yeah.
good stuff, man. So, all right, thanks for your time, folks. Man, whew, I was this was way more than I was expecting, but in a very positive way. I mean, what a great story. So, Patrick, thanks again for being on.
Thank you, Jeff. Yep.
Appreciate you, man.